Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight. If you've ever seen my channel introduction video that I posted almost 6 years ago, it was the first video I ever did for this YouTube channel, I mentioned in that video some of my inspirations for starting this YouTube channel. And one of those inspirations was Rodger Swan. Now he was a YouTuber from back in the day who actually taught English in Japan, and he was also a pretty big fan of Japanese cinema. Unfortunately, he passed away unexpectedly back in 2010, but he was still able to contribute a 50-video playlist that was dedicated to reviewing Japanese horror films. All of his videos are still on YouTube, so I'll include a link to that playlist in the description box below. Every once in a while, I'll rewatch some of his reviews to kind of refresh my memory on movies that I saw years ago but haven't seen since. I was watching his video on the best and the worst Japanese horror films, and I had an idea for a video of my own. You know, sometimes it's pretty amusing to talk about bad horror films, so I thought it might be a fun idea to present Rodger's list of his bottom 5 worst Japanese horror films, and then kind of critique and respond that list with some thoughts of my own. And then I would also give me a chance to honor the man, of course. Then at the end of this video, maybe I'll chuck in a few selections of my own that I think are actually worse than any of the films that he selected. So that's kind of the theme for this evening. And feel free to comment on some of those movies that would make your list of worst Japanese horror films. Now, before we begin, we have a few disclaimers here regarding Rodger's list. First of all, he posted this video back in June of 2009, so nothing that was released after that date is going to be on the list, obviously. Second, he intentionally limited himself to Japanese horror films that were released on Region 1 DVD in the United States, so just keep that in mind. If you've seen a film that was terrible, that might not be on his list, but it had like a Region 3 release or something, it's not going to qualify. So, let's do it. And I'm going to include a link to Rodger's best and worst video also in the description box. So here's his list here. All right, we're going to go one by one. The first film, all right, number 5 on his list, bottom 5, is this gem. Dead Waves. Yes, Dead Waves. When a television reporter or producer visits the home of a brother and sister to interview them for his series on paranormal phenomena, what first appears to be a simple case of psychopathology turns into a full-blown epidemic of demonic manifestation. That sounds complicated. To his horror, he realizes that he is not only a witness to the blossoming insanity, filming each scream in horrific expression, but that he and his technology have been intricately tied to the cause and conduit of its spread. That's quite a nice little plot synopsis there. Nicely written, spiffy synopsis. Makes this sound like a possible newer classic. It is not, folks. So, at the beginning of the film, you get almost kind of like an eerie opening sequence with some moody lighting, but don't let that fool you. This film is not good. Now, Rodger included it on his list because it's a cliche film that tries to copy the greats that came before it, specifically Japanese ghost films like Ring and Ju-on. And it failed miserably at doing so. And I do completely agree with this sentiment. This movie is bad. Now, we can start with the protagonist here, all right? The protagonist is a void of nothingness. And the actor who plays him just basically stares blankly ahead for almost the entire film. Complete lack of depth in terms of script writing, and also the performance. And, obviously the character development. Makes it hard to sit through. Story is flimsy, dialogue is boring and flat, pacing is very slow. And one side character is unintentionally hilarious every time he hits the screen. You'll probably identify who it is if you've seen this before. You have scenes of human bodies just falling from the sky for no reason. Every horror sequence is marred by poor execution. This supernatural entity in this film it's like a person, like a humanoid entity, ghost thing that crawls on the ground. So it's almost like mimicking Kayako from Ju-on, right? But it's not nearly as good. There's one scene where the lead actress gets dragged backwards on the floor by the evil dead waves. That they call them dead waves, I think. And it's unintentionally funny. And there are multiple scenes of people just falling downstairs, which is not executed well. And a person trapped inside of their television. So none of these scenes, even though they might sound like they have potential, none of them are executed well. And the finale is really bad. Really bad. There is a little bit of color that's infused at times, but production values are really low in this. And it does not feel cinematic at all. Totally like a made-for-television feel to this film. Now, I do watch a bunch of Japanese made-for-television and direct-to-video horror films, some of which are actually quite good. But when everything else in the film is bad, the low production values do not help matters. Now, one positive thing is that Shihori Kanjiya is in this. She was a supporting character in Swing Girls, which is a fantastic comedy. Nice to see her in this. Asuka Kurosawa is also in this film. You may recognize her from A Snake of June, as well as Cold Fish. Always like seeing her and stuff, but she has kind of like a small role in this. She deserves better roles than being in Dead Waves, that's for sure. And she's unfortunately going to make another appearance on Rodger's list tonight, believe it or not. So this film's just really bad. Like, if you choose to watch this thing for some unknown reason, alright, be sure to listen to the theme song at the end of the film. Alright? I'm not even joking. The theme song at the end of the film, during the credits, is an English language song entitled The Evils of Weed. Yeah. It's about marijuana. The Evils of Weed. Why would they choose a song, an English language song about marijuana, to end this film? It has nothing to do with drugs. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. And actually, a few lines in the song are actually really offensive. So, the song isn't even good. So yeah, this is an awful film. Definitely worthy. Rodger made a good choice. This film stinks. Good choice for a bottom 5 list. Let's move on. Alright, the next film had potential. Alright. Now, Dead Waves was from 2006. The next one is from 2005, and that is Synaesthesia. Yes, Synaesthesia. And yeah, this got a US release. No one ever talks about this film. And there's a reason why. Mari suffers from synesthesia, a rare disorder that mixes up the senses. She lives a sheltered life, but when her adoptive parents die mysteriously, her condition may hold the key to catching a dangerous serial killer. Now she and Shinsuke, another synesthete, must catch the killer before Mari becomes his next victim. So Rodger included this one on his bottom 5 because it's incoherent, drags on, and the acting is poor. I agree with some of those observations. Now, if you look at the cast list in this, it's actually pretty fantastic. We have Yosuke Iguchi, alright, who is in the Rurouni Kenshin films. He's been in a bunch of stuff over the years. Good actor. Masanobu Ando, he was in Battle Royale in a bunch of flicks. Aoi Miyazaki, who's like one of the best younger actresses in Japan. And Ryuhei Matsuda, who's been in a bunch of stuff like that. For a top 4 build cast, that's big time. Big time here. So the cast is talented. Now, in my opinion, the performances are actually decent in this. I think Yosuke Iguchi and Masanobu Ando are entertaining enough in the lead roles. The problem is that the script writing fails to give Aoi Miyazaki and Ryuhei Matsuda anything to work with. Their characters are so uninteresting. They just stand around, acting lethargic, nothing to work with in terms of character depth at all. That's a scriptwriter's fault in this case, and that's a problem. Now, the director here, Toru Matsuura, made only one theatrical film in his entire career. And guess what that film was? Synaesthesia. Yeah. And now, fortunately, I think like the opening section, maybe the opening half an hour of the film is interesting enough because you have multiple characters introduced, and there's some interesting concepts here. Miyazaki's character has been adopted multiple times, but her families have been murdered. So you're starting to think, I don't know, is this girl involved with these murders, or is there someone targeting her? It's got to be one or the other. And that, there's room to play with that. Then you have Yosuke and Masanobu. They run like this illegal operation where they take online subscriptions and broadcast secret videos of women. We have weird abstract drawings that are found next to the murder victims. And then we have this synesthesia disorder on top of that, which I guess might be a real-life disorder, actually. Like, if, like an example would be if you eat food, like let's say you eat chicken wings, and you're eating chicken wings, but your eyes automatically see yellow, or something weird. Where like the senses aren't lining up perfectly. There's like weird side effects and stuff. There's a lot of room to play with that. You know what I mean? So this movie had more than enough stuff to work with, had more than enough potential to be interesting, but a lot of that potential is just untapped. I mean, the content in this just vanishes, and the pacing just grinds to a screeching halt. Completely runs out of gas by the 60-minute mark, and this is like a 2-hour film. It's unfocused, it meanders way too much. There's no sense of urgency. The villain, like, taunts the protagonist, but the villain does it through, like, text messaging or, like, instant messaging on a computer. So it's like you guys couldn't find a better way to give the villain more personality than that. It was a bad decision. And some scenes drag out for too long. There's one death scene that dragged on for way too long. And, yeah, the ending's pretty bad. It's not satisfying at all. There's, like, no memorable suspense sequences at all. Like, this is a thriller, really. And they don't even try to get your blood pressure up at any point. There's, like, no tension at all. No creativity or suspense. And the disorder isn't even explored much. So I would say, like, in terms of acting and, like, production values, this is a pretty good flick. But in terms of script writing and direction, it's bad. You know what I mean? So it kind of levels out to, like, a below average flick overall. But, man, it's really boring to sit through. So I would say that my only real problem with including this on a bottom 5 worst Japanese horror film list is that I don't really consider this to be a horror film. This to me is a dramatic thriller. It's not even horror. So that would be my only gripe with including it on a list. But in terms of lost potential and unsatisfactory, like, entertainment value, it's a good choice. It should have been way better than what it turned out to be. All right, let's go to the third one here. All right, this one, a lot of people probably know this one. I don't know if Dead Waves or Synaesthesia are really well known. Don't really hear people talk about them much. But this one, I think a lot of fans of Japanese horror have probably seen the next one. It's 2004, kind of a horror drama. Male. Yes, male. So this is told through a handful of short segments. The film follows psychic detective Akiba and his enigmatic 19-year-old female assistant Mikoto, who's played by Chiaki Kuriyama from Battle Royale and Kill Bill fame. And they root out and release restless spirits that terrorize the world. And each segment of the film is focused around a particular spirit, and it's taken from a chapter of the manga that this is based on, apparently. I have not read the manga. So Rodger included this on his bottom 5 because it has some of the worst computer effects ever and just wasn't all that impressive. It's difficult to disagree with that point because the CGI in this is horrible. But is the film overall bad enough to be on, like, a worst of list? Let's find out here. Now, much of the first half, the film follows our main male protagonist as he goes through his ghost busting task. He's got like a gun, and there's like weird lighting when he shoots the ghosts. But like, for example, he might receive a letter from someone who needs help getting rid of a ghost who's in a painting or something like that, and he has to exercise the painting and figure out a way to release the spirit. The resolutions of these like ghostly encounters and conflicts, they don't really require that much effort from the protagonist to kind of figure them out. There might be a little twist here and there where they have to adapt their strategy, but it's nothing all that complicated or fascinating. But there are a few little surprises. I would say the earlier stories are a bit weak in dramatic effect. Some of them are kind of interesting, but others are kind of dull. There's one near the middle of the film that starts at like the 60-minute mark that's probably the most boring and sleep-inducing segment of the film, so that wasn't good. But I would have to say the most effective dramatic portion of the film comes near the end, and you have some additional, I guess, color on the main character. Get some flashbacks on that. Chiaki Kuriyama, very charming in a supporting role. She doesn't have a ton of screen time, but she's got enough for a supporting role. A nice mix of energetic and laid-back expressions. The scoring and the sound design are decent. It goes from like relaxing and hypnotic to something more intense at the appropriate times. So there are some positives to this. Unfortunately, I think the horror elements overall, they're kind of mediocre. There's nothing memorable about the scares in this really at all. And the CGI is pretty bad. And that's evident in the first 5 minutes of this movie. So in my opinion, Male it's more like just a thoroughly mediocre experience. There are some people who like this. I think because of Chiaki Kuriyama, and they like the melodramatic aspects that come into play. But I'm not the biggest fan of this one. I'm not sure it's really worthy of a worst of, like a bottom 5 all-time list, though. It's not that bad, in my opinion. So I kind of disagree with that selection. I think, like I said, most people who follow J-horror, I think, have seen this one. Here's another one I think has made some rounds. Again, this is number 2. This is the second worst Japanese horror film of all time. And this one, Shadow of the Wraith from 2001. Yes. The interesting thing here is that this film is split into 2 stories. First half of the film concerns a young man who is stalked by a girl, played by the stunning Hitomi Miwa, who appeared in, Eiko Eiko Azarak 3, Gore from Outer Space, and Crazy Lips. And the second half of the film concerns a young man who's involved with a girl whose home is the site of eerie occurrences, and she seems to be targeted for great misfortune. Now, Rodger included this film on his list because of bad acting, a goofy story, and some dodgy effects. But I gotta say, this one, I actually disagree with this selection outright. I do. Now, this film doesn't get the best ratings online, though, so I'm kind of in the minority. Now, this was directed by Toshiharu Ikeda, who previously directed Evil Dead Trap and Mermaid Legend, as well as Man Behind the Scissors, I believe. So I like this director. And right away, one criticism I could say is that Shadow of the Wraith doesn't make sense right from the start of the film, because being stalked by Hitomi Miwa is always a good thing. It is always a good thing. So we'll suspend our disbelief for that and let that one slide. But our male protagonist, he's not really that concerned with the stalking, behavior from Hitomi Miwa, as no heterosexual man probably would. But his attitude changes. One of his friends dies under dubious circumstances. So he thinks this girl might be connected. But here's the thing. This is what complicates things. Hitomi Miwa's character was with him when his buddy died elsewhere. So she has an airtight alibi. So that complicates the story a little bit. So he suspects this girl, but he almost can't because she's got an airtight alibi. So I thought that was kind of an interesting setup. Premise is actually kind of intriguing to me. I thought it was good. The scoring, camera work, and lighting are good. The story implants, I don't want to say it, a certain phenomena. I'll leave it at that. I always enjoy seeing this phenomena in films, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you watch this. But I thought it was legitimately entertaining, like the first story of this film. It has some atmosphere. I like the way they light the entity, and there's really not much CGI. It's more like practical lighting effects, which I liked. A little bit of cheesiness, though. Yeah, it's good. Oh, there is one concert scene, because they do have a few of the actors are a member of like a band in real life, so they threw in, a concert scene with it. But even the music isn't that bad. Like, it's not like boy band stuff. It was like light rock music. I was like, all right, this isn't bad. So even the obligatory music, concert segment was decent. And then we get the second half of the film, which is about the premise is pretty good here. A string of deaths in a neighborhood are following a family. So they move. They're smart enough to move. They're like, screw this. It's like this person died, this person died, this person died. Are we next? We're moving. And then they move into an apartment, and it just continues to follow them. It's like this person died, this person died, So they're like, they're in trouble. It was pretty interesting. It has some likable, lively characters. One person survives from part one of the first half of the film, and then they're involved in part two of the film, even though they're two separate stories. There's a link there. And there was some, some pretty good execution in this, I thought. I thought it was a pretty good flick. I think the finale is the strongest part. The pacing is a little bit of a problem in this one. It's kind of slow in the middle, but it finishes pretty strong near the end. I like the finale. So if you go in watching this, I actually like this film, legitimately. It's not great, but I think it's entertaining enough. But if you go in to watch it, go in with lowered expectations, because I am in the minority on this. So I disagree with this. I would not include this on a bottom 5. Now we get number 1. Number 1. And this one was a little bit surprising to me. It's not totally, but a little bit. Number 1, according to Rodger Swan, this is one of the worst, if not the worst, Japanese horror film that he's seen. Keirei, The Terror of Beauty. Yes. So, this is a 2004 film. A cosmetic surgeon performs numerous procedures on a psychologically unstable woman, leading to unwelcome consequences when this woman keeps coming back for more extreme procedures before her previous procedures and surgeries were properly healed. So Rodger included this on his list because of basically everything. The acting, there's forced nudity in this. Nothing worked for him. But again, I think I'm going to disagree on this. I'm going to disagree on this one. Now, Japan has churned out their fair share of super low budget horror flicks. And this is one of them. It's pretty low budget. But I think it's entertaining enough. I thought the script writing and the performances were good enough. I know, again, I'm in the minority on this. But I've seen far worse script writing and performances in horror films. Characters are also fairly interesting. The antagonist is kind of creepy, kind of menacing. And the protagonist actually has a bit of an edge herself. And, I think there is some intense moments regarding surgery horror. If you're into medical surgery type of visuals and stuff, it doesn't get over the top graphic, but there is some stuff that'll make you maybe wince a little bit. So if you like that kind of thing, this is good for it. There's some discussions on Aphrodite near the beginning, like a little bit of, mythos building. And there's some observations about how modern day plastic surgeons are like alchemists in a way, because they can turn people's faces into gold, or make their faces look better. It's kind of interesting. And yes, Asuka Kurosawa is in this film as well. But I like her, so it's a positive here. Now, there are negatives to this, though. All right, the production value is very low. The sex scenes are kind of gratuitous, kind of repetitive, kind of padding out the runtime a little bit. And the ending has a certain absurd element to it. That's kind of like my biggest gripe of the film. I think they could have maybe stuck the ending a little bit better, but it's still all right. Now, there are better films out there dealing with plastic surgery. If you have not seen the Korean film Time from 2006, directed by Kim Ki-duk, that's probably the best one I've seen. That kind of plays with the concept of plastic surgery. But I think there was a film called Cinderella from South Korea as well that was pretty good. So there's some out there. But this is watchable. I think this is watchable. It held my interest. Remember, I'm in the minority, though. So, again, I got to give him credit for this list because none of these films are, like, very good, in my opinion. So, at the very least, he got that right. And a few of them are really bad. I mean, Dead Waves. Oh, my goodness. That movie's just terrible. And Synaesthesia isn't that much better. Now, one thing I'm surprised about. Rodger reviewed a film called Blind Beast vs. Killer Dwarf. And I've seen that one a long time ago. And I remember that being horrible. And I'm kind of surprised that didn't make the list. I think Blind Beast vs. Killer Dwarf would be a perfect entry on a bottom 5 Japanese horror list. I mean, Knockout Shadow of the Wraith put that one in, or even Male. Blind Beast vs. Killer Dwarf makes Male look like a freaking masterpiece. But I haven't seen it recently, so I'm not going to review it again here. I'm pretty sure I reviewed it in my Asian horror playlist, I think. But now I'm going to give you 2 alternative picks, right? So I disagreed on a few of these. So what would I replace them with, outside of Blind Beast vs. Killer Dwarf? All right. I'll limit myself to, again, American releases. I picked them out, and these are some of the worst Japanese horror films that I have ever seen. Ever. And they were released in America. Now, both of these films, there's 2, are part of a specific series in Japan, the Kyofu Yawa movie series. There was like 6 films in this film series, made for television, produced in Japan in 2003, subsequently released by a distribution company called Laguna Productions in the United States. And they are called Ghostgate and Demon Hunting. These movies are so painful, I'm surprised they're so unknown. Like, almost no one has seen these films, which is kind of surprising, because I remember them hitting Amazon like 15 years ago. You know what I mean? And I saw them, and I just blind bought them, because there was no reviews of them. Which, it would have been helpful to have some reviews up on these. So, what is it about these awful films? Well, let's start with Ghostgate. Alright? Ghostgate, these are from 2003. I have a 3-pack of Melancholia, Last Coffin, and Ghostgate, and they're a part of this series of films here. So this movie is set several years after a brutal murder of an author named Tokita. Now this guy Tokita, his secretary was murdered. So this guy Tokita was cleared of the crime and he vanished. Years after the murder, his house was like abandoned and left untouched because people thought it was cursed. So you have a group of people going into this place trying to solve the riddle of the murder, because there's a reward of like 50 million yen if you could solve the murder. Like who really killed this woman? Was it this Tokita dude or something else? So that's your premise. Not a bad premise, all right, not bad. But this movie I can't even put it into words how bad this is. Like your first scene, a woman's like standing in the middle of a forest screaming, and it looks like she's got melted marshmallow on her or something. Like, I don't know what it was supposed to be. Really bad. Very amateur hour direction. Camera work is sloppy. Framing of shots is not good. They even use freeze frames badly, and I'm a fan of freeze frames. Writing, acting, special effects, all atrocious. Really bad. Characters kind of walk around this mansion or house, and they just kind of get trapped there, right? And, again, just like some of the films I've been covering in my Asian horror playlist, the bad ones, when you have like a one-location film with restricted sets, you got to make the sets good. or at least colorful and engaging. They don't do that here. That's a problem. And even the editing is underwhelming in this. Like, the scenes just kind of ended or stitched together in a bad fashion. They do use an Onryo ghost. Death scenes are abysmal. There's one. Let me give you an idea. A guy's sitting in the middle of the room. He starts moaning in pain, right? and there's a really crappy camera distortion around him. That's your death scene. There's a choking scene near the end that, like, lasts forever. So this is bad. There's really nothing good in this film that I can think of. Even, like, the background scares aren't really that good. And again, these characters are trapped in this mansion getting murdered. And there's times in the film where they're, like, sleeping and relaxing. Like, some people would just sleep on a couch alone in a room. There's, like, people dying around here, bro. Like, what are you doing? It's not good. There's even a bad romance angle they throw in. Like, I almost feel like you need to watch this film to understand, but you don't want to watch this film. It even feels like a soap opera quality. Very boring to watch. And then there's a twist near the end that's just crap. So yeah, if you ever watch this Ghost Gate out of morbid curiosity, it's dubbed in English, and it's rough to sit through because of that as well. So I will say this: if I say one decent thing, the music is decent. The music in this, the scoring is decent. So yeah, this is really bad. And then we have Demon Hunting from the people who brought us Ghost Gate. 2003, we have Michiru is a teenager who makes a pact with a demon to kill a rival classmate who's dating a teacher. And our girl Michiru has a crush on the teacher. But of course, the demon goes out of control and the world's about to be destroyed. It's really confusing what this film's about, even when you're watching it. And it's tough to follow. Now, there are a few recognizable faces in this. Remember Versus, the Ryohei Kitamura film? Well, the bad guy in that film is in this film. You know, I really like that actor, and he deserves better than this. And then we have one of the actresses from Shadow of the Wraith is also in this. But make no mistake, folks, Demon Hunting is a pile of crap. Terrible writing, acting, special effects. Editing is, again, terrible. Here's the thing with this one, right? You have these demons, but it's basically just like an actor. They didn't feel like actually creating a demon outfit. But the way you know that it's the demon is the human being will stand there and stick out its tongue, and its tongue will be red. That's how you know it's the demon. And the demon does this a lot. Like, the protagonist will be standing there, and she'll see someone acting weird in the distance, and the person will look at her and stick out their tongue to her, and it'll be all red. So like, hey, I'm the demon. Like, to intimidate her or something. Like, it's mind-boggling, folks. This film's mind-boggling. Again, the death scenes are of course terrible. You have demons sticking their tongues out. And then, here's an example. The demon will stick out its tongue. And then it just cuts. You get an edit. And then you'll see someone in, like, the ocean, just lying in the ocean, in the water, with, like, a really bad visual computer effect over them that's supposed to be blood. Yeah. Yep. Now, in some cases, like I say, low-budget films can be good. You know, they really can be, but there's very little that is redeeming in this. Now, there is a scene that made me chuckle. All right, the demon confronts our protagonist at one point in a basketball, on a basketball court in the gym. And the demon confronts our protagonist. It does a little like dance or something, and then it challenges her to a basketball match. Yeah, it's like a game of horse or something. Like let's shoot some basketball, and I bet you I'll beat you. And I don't know if it was really a humorous event, like it was intentional or not. If you watch the film, let me know. And then the English dub, of course, is terrible. So There's one thing that surprised me about Demon Hunting, though. When I rewatched it for the first time in like 15 years, I actually think that Ghost Gate is a little bit more difficult to sit through, which surprised me because I had always assumed for like 15 years that Demon Hunting was worse than Ghost Gate. I don't know, man. At least in Demon Hunting, some stuff happens, whereas in Ghost Gate, people are just sitting around on couches like in this mansion most of the time. So I would say Demon Hunting edges out Ghost Gate in terms of entertainment value. So, yeah, Ghost Gate is pretty abysmal. And, yes, that's some of the worst quality Japanese horror films I've ever seen. If I were ever to do, like, an official bottom list, which I probably should do at some point, you can almost guarantee that those two films are going to be on my list. It doesn't get much worse than that. So, how about you? All right, have you seen any of these films? What are your thoughts? All right, any of Rodger's selections or of mine? And are there any other films that you would put on your like bottom 5 or bottom 10 worst Japanese horror films of all time? It could be from any year, any release, just to make it interesting. And I bet you half of the responses I get, if I get any, I bet you half of them are films that I enjoy. Like there's one called St. John's Wort that a lot of people hate. It's like real low budget like these, but that one I really like for some reason. So it'll be interesting to see. One person's dumpster juice is another person's treasure, as they say. But in the meantime, you could check out my Asian horror playlist on this channel if you haven't already. I review a lot of the good and bad Asian horror films in general, but there's a lot of Japanese stuff in there as well. So you'll get some good recommendations in that playlist. So yeah, it was kind of interesting to do this. I always wanted to do kind of a video on just bad Japanese horror films. So we covered a few of them here. There's obviously more. And maybe I'll do another video like this in the future. But yes, check out Rodger's channel as well. It would be nice to get some more views over there, just in honor of the man. And as always, we will see you next time.